Welcome to the latest edition of the Shukri Wrights Podcast with your host, Shukri Wrights. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, thank you for making this podcast part of your Wednesday. Hope you are having a great day so far, because I know one person who is, or maybe they aren't, depending on their attitude. And that is one Damian Lillard, in which that we're going to start off the podcast with breaking news that just happened literally as I hit record. Damian Lillard is now officially an ex-Portland Trailblazer. He has been traded to not the Miami Heat as he wanted, but to the Milwaukee Bucks. It is part of a 3-team deal with the Phoenix Suns that has Damian Lillard going to the Milwaukee Bucks in a blockbuster deal that certainly will have major ramifications across the Eastern Conference and for surely the NBA. So let's talk about the details of this trade. Damian Lillard, he is going to the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, as part of the deal, Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, they're going to the Trailblazers, as well as the Bucks 2029 unprotected first round pick and unprotected swap rights in 2028 and 2030. The Suns in this deal will get Jusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. So again, let's go over the details quickly. Damian Lillard going to the Milwaukee Bucks as part of a 3-team deal that includes the Milwaukee Bucks, the Phoenix Suns. Who's going to the Trailblazers? Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara. And the Bucks are sending their 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick, unprotected swap rights in 2028 and 2030. And the Phoenix Suns, they are landing Jusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. But let's talk about the key piece to this deal, Damian Lillard. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big deal. Damian Lillard is playing alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo and a healthy Chris Middleton in Milwaukee. I don't know about you, but the Boston Celtics now have competition on their hands. It's not that they didn't before. Let me clarify that. It's not that Boston Celtics didn't have competition before. If anything, and I try to be as unbiased as I possibly can with this take, I still expect the Boston Celtics to be the favorites to get out of the Eastern Conference to go to the NBA Finals this upcoming season. But, with a big but, you do have contenders in the East, such as Milwaukee. You have contenders like Miami. You cannot overlook the Miami Heat. And as well as the Philadelphia 76ers. Say what you will. But the bottom line is that the Milwaukee Bucks, as of right now, as of this episode recording, they have a scary trio in Milwaukee that includes Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard, and Chris Middleton. Despite losing Jrue Holiday, I still think that this Milwaukee team has now put themselves in prime position to potentially knock off the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference. This is why when the news broke this past summer that Damian Lillard wanted out of the Portland Trailblazers, that him coming to the East, as he mentioned he wanted to go to Miami Heat, I thought this was going to spell bad news for the Boston Celtics specifically. But ironically enough, what I find interesting that actually ended up happening is the Boston Celtics' worst nightmare just became reality. Because now Damian Lillard is now in the East, but not with the Miami Heat, but with Milwaukee instead. See, I was already a long proponent, a long believer that the Celtics this season, that they are top in the East. This was their conference to lose. I expect this team to learn from a disheartening performance that they had in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat on their own home court, no less, and run it back and make another run to the NBA Finals. Even though they went out and they did sign Kristaps Porzingis in free agency, they have a disgruntled Malcolm Brogdon who they nearly traded, but they didn't. Hopefully that's been patched up. But now the Celtics, they have a legitimate problem on their hands. Milwaukee. Because I will warn Celtic fans this. With this trade, you have a legitimate threat now in the East that's gotten even more dangerous than they were a year ago. And I'm sure all NBA fans already know this, but Damian Lillard is an absolute assassin on the court. We know what his credentials are. We all know what he is fully capable of. A surefire Hall of Famer. Probably the best talent in the NBA who consistently fell short of contending for a championship. Now that he's been traded to the Miami Bucks, ooh-wee, that expectation has grown even larger now because he's now playing with a top 5 player in the sport right now. I think every NBA fan can agree to the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo is a top 5 player right now in the NBA. Now, Damian Lillard is also in that conversation as well. Now, you put those two together on the same court, playing alongside Chris Middleton, if he stays healthy, ooh-wee. Dear Boston Celtics, prepare for Milwaukee because you're going to have a dogfight for that number 1 seed in the East. You're going to. Say what you will about the Milwaukee Bucks failures as a franchise following winning their first NBA title in 2021 in the postseason. But now, with the changes that they've made, you can expect them to be championship contenders and now, arguably, take that next step. Take the next step and get into the NBA Finals now that you have a Damian Lillard on your team. Because, folks, ooh-wee. Milwaukee said, you know what? A player of this caliber is too good to let up. We're not letting him go to Miami, whom many people have said that they are just one superstar just short of being a championship contending team. That superstar just went to Milwaukee instead. You ever seen that meme on Twitter of that dude that basically is like, yeah. And then when he realized that there's an even bigger problem, he's like, yeah, that's the Boston Celtics right now. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast, basically you went from smiling to now realizing with your jaw dropped wide open that Milwaukee is a team, in my opinion, that is now going to be a force to be reckoned with in the East. Say what you will about Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I don't trust. Even though they fired Doc Rivers, and even though the grumblings and all of the bumblings going on in Philadelphia right now surrounding James Harden and the Sixers, Milwaukee is that team that is now a legitimate threat to the Boston Celtics in terms of the Eastern Conference supremacy. Because we already know that the West is already loaded. We already know that. But the East, in terms of legitimate contenders for a championship, it's very short. It's a very short list. Boston, Milwaukee, and dare I even say Miami. Those three are your legitimate contenders for a championship out of the East. Many people, including myself, I expected that the Celtics would be the prohibitive favorites to go back to the NBA Finals this season. Not so fast, because the Milwaukee Bucks, if all goes right and they stay healthy as a team, they're going to have something to say about that. Best believe. With this blockbuster trade, man, this definitely has absolutely impacted what is going to happen in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about a team that just clinched a playoff spot last night in Major League Baseball and why it's actually a big deal. It needs to be talked about that this same team, I think, might be the most dangerous team in the National League. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to tell you exactly just who that is. Coming up next here in the Shukri Wrights Podcast with your host, Shukri Wrights. Don't go nowhere. Welcome back to the Shukri Wrights Podcast with your host, Shukri Wrights. We start off the podcast with major breaking news in the NBA. In case if you have not heard by now on socials or anywhere else, Damian Lillard is now an ex-Portland Trailblazer. He has been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks as part of a 3-team deal involving the Phoenix Suns and the Portland and obviously the Milwaukee Bucks as well. So that's big news out of the NBA. But now we're going to switch our attention to Major League Baseball because, September pennant races are obviously well underway. They have now hit fever pitch with just maybe 5 days left in the regular season. And last night, as part of clinching season, as I like to call it in Major League Baseball, anytime we get to like mid-September, by and large part, I call it clinching season because, teams start wrapping up the division or the wild card. Teams are maybe like 3 or 4 teams are within like a 2 or 3 game difference in the standings and so forth. But one team I actually want to focus on during this segment is the Philadelphia Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies clinched the playoff spot last night, beating the Pittsburgh Pirates 3-2, in which that Aaron Nola really was the story of last night's game. He pitched 6 2/3 innings, 8 strikeouts, one earned run allowed. He was just absolutely tremendous. And there was, people in Philadelphia who are wondering, is Aaron Nola a big game pitcher? And I honestly think that he is. When he's really dialed in, he really is a big game pitcher, and he has the stuff to be consistently among the absolute best in Major League Baseball when it comes to starting pitchers and so forth. Now, let me tell you why this is actually a big deal. Because Philadelphia, by nature, as I've learned, they love to be negative. Yes, they love to root for an underdog story, but there's a segment of the fans in Philadelphia that are rather negative. Folks, as passionate as this city is, you haven't seen enough championships in this century alone, let alone in the last 25 years, to not appreciate what this current core of Philadelphia Phillies are doing. When I talk about the current core of the Philadelphia Phillies, I'm talking about Bryce Harper. I'm talking about JT Realmuto. I'm talking about, like Aaron Nola. I'm talking about, Bryson Stott. I'm talking about Trey Turner. I'm talking about that core in which that, and obviously there are others as well, in which that this is a group that now in back-to-back seasons they've made it to the postseason. When was the last time that this Philadelphia Phillies organization has seen a team have multiple years of success? I'll wait. The last time that happened was that run between 2007 until 2011, that 5-season run in which that the Phillies were consistently among the absolute best in Major League Baseball, World Series contenders. Hell, they won a World Series in that stretch 2008, got back again the next year to the World Series in 2009. Remember that core with, Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Carlos Ruiz, Cole Hamels. Right now, with this core, they recognize that after getting to the World Series last year, when in reality, let's be honest, most people in Philadelphia did not believe in this team last year. But when they got to the postseason and they really got on that roll after beating the Cardinals in the wild card series, then the defending world champion Braves in the division series, and then the Padres and on that magical, not walk-up, but that magical home run that Bryce Harper hit in the bottom of the 8th in Game 5, most people did not believe until the team got to October. This year, the Phillies going into spring training, most people expected this team to be a good team. And why the hell not? Why not? You had gone out and you signed Trey Turner. Trey Turner was struggling. He was scuffling. And the fans were getting on his case, letting him have it. It took sports radio listeners of Sports Radio 94 WIP to encourage Trey Turner, encourage him, give him a standing ovation, show him some love before he finally turned his season around. And then not to mention, Bryce Harper at the beginning of the year, he basically needed his elbow to be reconstructed. And then came back sooner than most people expected him to. Kyle Schwarber, again, another year, consistently giving you 40-plus home runs, 100 runs batted in. Although his batting average leaves much more to be desired, but this is someone who's giving you consistent power out of the leadoff spot. So with that being said, the Phillies, and especially the segment of Philly fans who aren't thrilled or happy about this, I don't know why aren't you more excited about it? There, in fact, should be a lot more electricity from the fan base. And the fact that second straight year, wild card again this year. This year you clinched the top wild card spot, in which you're going to be hosting the wild card series in Philadelphia next week. And yet there's still some people that are rather miserable. I don't understand why. Why? What more do you want from this team? What more do you honestly expect from the Phillies? You have an owner who's willingly gone out and spent money on this team, and understandably so. Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, as well as now Trey Turner as well. Some of the big fishes that they've got in free agency in the last few years, they've got those guys now. And going into October, there are people, including myself, who I will say that the Philadelphia Phillies are incredibly dangerous. They are a dangerous team going into October, and it would not surprise me if the Philadelphia Phillies go out and make another run to the World Series, only this time to win it. It would not surprise me. Here's why I do think the Phillies are even more dangerous this year and could very possibly win the World Series. Here's why. You have Bryce Harper, who's healthy, who's really swinging a good bat right now. And I would even take it a step further in terms of the pitching. Zach Wheeler is that dude. Aaron Nola, when he's right, he is that dude. So when you have a healthy Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola on top of their game, that is as good of a 1-2 punch as there is in baseball, especially in the National League. Don't even get me started. Yes, I'm putting Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, that 1-2 duo for the Phillies, right there with the likes of the Atlanta Braves' Spencer Strider and as well as Max Fried. I'm putting it up there with the likes of the Dodgers pitching. I'm putting it up there with the best of the best, with Milwaukee, for example. And why not? But the Phillies, when they're swinging the bats and they're playing at home, oh, by the way, they were 48-31 at home at the time of this recording. One of the best home records in baseball. This team at home is dangerous. They can win on the road, yeah, but Home field advantage matters for the Phillies, and they have that, at least in the wild card round. I am concerned about Craig Kimbrell. I don't trust him in big spots. I haven't trusted him in big spots for a long time, going back to when he was with the Boston Red Sox. Another appearance, another home run he allowed last night. And you got to wonder about Craig Kimbrell's confidence at this point. Yes, he's the setup guy to Jose Alvarado, but the fact of the matter is, this guy has been shaky. And if I am manager Rob Thompson, I've got to be shaking in my pants every time that you bring him into the game and you got a 1-run lead. Can you honestly trust him to maintain that 1-run lead? That's the question that I would pose. But the Phillies as a team, they are dangerous. They are absolutely dangerous. This is a team that just got to the World Series last year. This is a team that has shown a lot of resilience, despite of the ups and downs of the long season. It's 162 games. But the reality is that this is a team with the experience that they have from last year. They believe. They truly believe they can get back to the World Series and, heck, even win the whole damn thing. The question is to the segment of the population in Philadelphia that don't truly believe in the Phillies, why don't you? Why not? It doesn't even matter who they play in the wild card round, honestly. I would think that they would be the favorites, regardless of who they play in round one in the wild card series. But here's the reality. The Phillies, with the experience that they have last year, being an even better team this year, and even though the bridge to Jose Alvarado is a little concerning, but this is a team that is well equipped to go on another World Series run and even win the World Series. Why not? Why not the Phillies? So yes, I am going to jump on the Phillies bandwagon this October and say, I'm picking the Phillies to win the World Series. I really am. Because if there's one thing that we've seen in baseball time and time again, it doesn't matter if you have the best regular season record. Doesn't matter. It means absolutely nothing. Zero. It's about who's playing the best baseball going into October. That's what matters. And of course, we've seen wildcard teams in recent years win the World Series, even prior to the wildcard expansion and so forth. So it's not impossible that the Phillies could actually go on a run and win the World Series, especially considering that this is almost the same team that went to the World Series last year, obviously making tweaks and additions during this past off season. So why not have a little faith in the Phillies? I'm picking the Phillies to win the World Series. Point blank. I'm picking the Phillies to win the World Series. Hands down. Come talk to me at the end of October or early November whenever they wrap it up. That's my prediction. I got one more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up the podcast, and that is the state of the New York Jets in terms of the locker room. Because I saw two things. There was two things I came across today. One on Twitter, one on Fox Sports Radio, Fox Sports 1 on The Herd with Colin Cowherd. First and foremost, I came across a tweet, which I never, ever do this, but I'm of the genuine belief that where there's smoke, there's fire. And the tweet basically was alluding to the state of the New York Jets locker room right now. I'm going to paraphrase the tweet. It was an NFL rumor tweet that I came across today. And what I found funny about that tweet was it ran directly parallel with what I had saw and heard on The Herd on Fox Sports Radio, on Fox Sports 1 earlier today. Basically, what I saw in the tweet was that that the Jets locker room is on the verge of imploding. And we're talking about in terms of the play and performance of Zach Wilson. The locker room is on the verge of imploding. Why? Because the coach, Robert Saleh, continues to strut him out, continues to have him start in games in which the Jets need to win. And Zach Wilson hasn't done him or the team any solid favors at all in regards to his play. Now, earlier today on the Herd on Fox Sports Radio and Fox Sports 1, this is what I heard and what I saw as I was watching the show. Jason McIntyre, who's the co-host on that show, he basically said that quote that he had texted a couple of people that are in the Jets building and so forth as to what's happening, yada, yada, yada. And in his words, all he got was radio silence. And according to McIntyre, that this is where he usually would, hear back as to what's happening, but radio silence. Why do you think that is? One speculated that maybe perhaps that they're working on a trade, maybe trying to acquire Kirk Cousins from the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know how true that is. But between the tweet and as well as what I saw on Fox Sports Radio, Fox Sports 1 earlier today on the Herd, it has led me down to this conclusion that the New York Jets, if they don't make a move for a quarterback, an NFL caliber quarterback, that is, the vitriol and the self-implosion will be 100% well-deserved. For you Zach Wilson apologists that are out there, wake up and smell the roses. That dude absolutely sucks. He is a bum of a quarterback. He is the worst quarterback in the league. Forget about opinion. Go look at the stats. You need a quarterback. And what I have read and what I saw today via social media and as well as in sports media circles is that this is a situation that can very easily be rectified. And that needs to be rectified. Because as of right now, as we sit here on this Wednesday, with Sunday Night Football approaching in 4 days, they got a major showdown against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. They're looking at a national embarrassment. Because I'm telling you right now, if nothing gets done between now and Sunday, I'm tuning in Sunday night to watch the Jets and Chiefs game on Sunday Night Football and to watch this team absolutely embarrass itself, to crap its pants. I am going to watch that game just to laugh and mock the New York Jets. I'm talking specifically head coach Robert Saleh, specifically general manager Joe Douglas. Not the fans. This ain't got nothing to do with the Jet fans. So Jet fans, hold your horses. It's got nothing to do with you. I am mocking the head coach and the general manager if nothing gets done between now and Sunday. Because do you really want to lose on Sunday night by 30 points? Do you want to suffer an embarrassment similar to the likes of what Miami delivered against Denver this past Sunday, in which that the Dolphins dropped a 70 burger? And yes, I know that the Chiefs have not looked the same offensively since Eric Bieniemy took his talents to Washington with the Washington Commanders and whatnot. They have not averaging the same amount of points per game. But this is still Patrick freaking Mahomes that we're talking about. This is Patrick Mahomes. And what you have is a disheveled Kevin James, poking his lips and have his hands in his pockets like that's what you have as your quarterback right now. And the team is falling apart, and you wonder why? Because no one in our locker room believes in Zach Wilson. It ain't about Zach Wilson's got to play better. Robert Saleh, stop selling your locker room and the media nonsense. Like I said in my podcast episode on Monday, You can't lie to New Yorkers. You can't fool New Yorkers. And you sure as hell can't fool Jet fans. So what I've heard and what I've seen today doesn't surprise me in the slightest bit. But what does surprise me is them going out and getting Trevor Siemian and signing him to be on the practice squad for the New York Jets. That did surprise me. I'm like, I mean, you could say right now that Trevor Siemian is probably better than Zach Wilson, but what do I know? So that's just my thoughts on that. Just want to share that with you real quick while I still had the chance here in the pod, which concludes. And I want to say thank you for all of you and all of my fans who watch and listen and enjoy my content, whether you agree with me or not. I appreciate it as always. Don't forget to hit subscribe and download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube so you get notified when the new podcast gets dropped. So stay tuned for the next episode. Until next time, this is Shukri Wrights signing off. Thank you for listening to and watching the Shukri Wrights Podcast on YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you later. See ya.